Award season drama. You kinda love it, you almost always hate it. For some reason, every year without fail during the major film awards campaigns, an interesting phenomena happens, which is the rise of a self-termed Oscar villain. Now, this term is used to describe either a film, filmmaker, or actor who people don't entirely feel deserve a nomination in their respective category. Now, film is a subjective art, which is why a conversation such as this has garnered many different reactions and opinions from people who pay attention to these awards. Whether it was Green Book winning Best Picture, or Bradley Cooper turning an entire film community against him for winning an Oscar desperately, the hive mind mentality behind some of these hate campaigns can sometimes be quite alarming, especially for someone inside of the conversation. As an accredited film critic, I try not to pay attention as much to the outside drama during award seasons, as I have to vote in several different awards groups, and I feel that outside influences such as this contribute to a negative mindset heading into these. However, sometimes there are instances where a film or performance garnering this backlash is impossible to ignore, even to people inside of the industry. This is the case this year with the film Emilia Pérez. Flashback to October of 2024, as I was covering the Savannah Film Festival at the time as press. I was having a fantastic week binging and watching all these awards contender films, and as the week drew to a close, to say I was exhausted was an understatement. On the night before I was to leave the festival, I stumbled out of my Nickel Boy screening at 8 o'clock, dazed both in terms of lack of sleep and also from the film alone. I consulted my schedule and saw one remaining screening for the night, which was Emilia Pérez. Now back then I knew very little about this film. I knew it had played at Cannes to critical acclaim back in May, and that Netflix had bought it for a release in November on their platform. Other than that though, I knew nothing about the plot or the actors who were in it. Normally this would be where I said, I'm fine skipping at the festival, I can just catch it next month on Netflix, no big deal. But as I stood there thinking through my options, a rise of screams from next to me alerted me. I literally looked over at the red carpet to see Zoe Saldana walking down practically right next to me as she headed into the very theater that Emilia Pérez was scheduled to play in momentarily. That was enough to convince my sleep-deprived mind. I ran over to the pass holder line, scanned in, and rushed up to the balcony to see, well, whatever it was I was about to see. I had no clue. The theater was packed with eager festival goers, and the din of conversation was quite loud. I was fighting off sleep by the time the pre-film intro started. As both Zoe Saldana and Carla Sofia Gaskin took the stage to give brief remarks before the film, I was somewhat apprehensive of what I was about to see. And the film started, and I lasted about 45 minutes. Watching the first half of this film in a sleep-deprived mind state is not the experience I'd wish upon anyone. I had to legitimately pinch myself several times throughout to make sure I was not dreaming and that what I was experiencing was real and not some elaborate fever dream. I knew at the 45-minute mark as I consulted my watch that I could not make it a minute more without going insane or falling asleep, whichever came first. So I did something remarkably rare for myself, which has only happened twice so far in my movie-going career, and walked out of the theater. Cut to November. I'm scrolling on Netflix on a Friday night trying to find something to watch, and I see Emilia Pérez sitting right on the homepage. Flashbacks immediately fill me from a month prior, and again, that morbid curiosity gets the best of me. It's personal policy that I finish all films before reviewing them, and for this reason, I figured maybe I had remembered it wrong, that maybe my lack of sleep had contributed greatly to my lack of enjoyment in this film. So I clicked play, starting at the beginning, watched the entire thing, and clicked the stop button as the end credits rolled in abstract shock. I could not believe what I had just seen, and not in a good way. For all the critical acclaim this film was getting, I was left with a result that felt so unfinished and uneven, scattered all over the place in a manic frenzy. To say Emilia Pérez is anything but a mess is an understatement of perhaps the entire year. As the award shows have continued on to this point, and Emilia Pérez continues to sweep category after category and nomination after nomination, it's baffling to both myself and legitimately almost everyone in the film industry. I mean, how can a film this horrible and damaging be able to win over the entire industry? I don't understand. At the time of creating this video, Emilia Pérez is sitting at a 24% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 2.4 average on Letterboxd, and it's nominated for Best Picture. The conversation surrounding this film has reached an all-time high post-Oscar nominations, and I figured there was no better time to break down and deconstruct the film from both a technical and thematic level than now. Now, please note that the following review is not going to be explicitly hate-filled. The conversation surrounding this film has recently trended from valid criticism to venom-filled hatred. I am not here to contribute or feed into that hate in any way, and if you clicked on that video expecting that, you are more than welcome to leave. I'm just simply going to be breaking down my problems with this film from a purely critical and thematic standpoint, as any professional film critic would. With that, let's jump right into this mess of a movie. Emilia Pérez is a genre-bending quote-unquote musical film that follows a lawyer named Rita, who is a lawyer living in Mexico who one evening is kidnapped and offered a mysterious job. which is to help a known cartel boss retire and transition into a woman to fulfill a long-held desire, which is to help people. This is the relatively simple setup of a film, which shows some semblance of promise as it starts. The opening musical number is actually quite interesting, even if the rest of the film isn't. As we are introduced to Rita, we are thrown into a stylistic blend of choreography and kinetic camera movement, which is hindered by quite possibly some of the weakest songwriting put to a musical film, which is especially noticeable in a year in which a musical film like Wicked showcased strong songwriting and choreography. Director Jacques Altidard is on record stating he doesn't particularly care for musicals, and boy is it evident here. Perhaps the biggest problem with Emilia Pérez is that for a musical, the songs are not anything to write home about, which is a problem when the songs are at the forefront of telling the story here. Now, I'm not a musical theater critic, as film is where my passions lie and where I'm accredited, but I've dabbled in and seen enough Broadway shows and musical films in the past to warrant some insight into the musical elements of the film. As someone who comes from a music background and was raised in classical music and singing, the lyrics feel disconnected and surface level, serving to highlight elements of the plot and move story beats forward in a way that doesn't always seem nuanced or insightful. The melodies are surprisingly weak and simplistic, with recurring motifs and awkward intonation. The reliance several times throughout on this form of whispery-like singing popularized by modern-day musicals is also quite distracting. Nothing about these musical moments feels particularly warranted or needed, which begs the question, why did this story have to be a musical at all? As it stands, unlike the majority of musical-based media, the songs and musical numbers here serve little purpose to the overall plot or atmosphere of this. Rather, it's quite distracting when characters go from a dramatic moment or perilous situation to breaking into song. The subject matter alone is intriguing and interesting, lending itself to a darker and more serious tone. So the choice to undercut these moments of grave severity is absolutely baffling to me. It is insane that nowhere along the creative process did the filmmaking team step in to examine, hey, maybe this isn't the correct tone for this film. Similarly, perhaps the other biggest problem with this film is that the material is serious in tone, but the execution feels blatantly silly for such an unintentional way. For example, a major plot point about this film involves the kidnapping and trafficking of children and people by cartels inside of Mexico. Now, as someone with somewhat limited knowledge of the circumstances surrounding this information, I'm evidently aware that such an issue is a major factor inside the country and something that deserves to be treated with respect and seriousness, which is why the fact that it isn't here is so painful and hurtful and really damaging. Real people are dealing with this in real life, which the film somehow feels like it doesn't understand. The film attempts to breach ground in this regard by opening a discussion towards this unfortunate situation, but jarringly pivots away from this before it can say something profound or insightful relating to the dramatic depth of this. Add to this the laughably bad musical numbers, and you have a film that feels so off in terms of execution and substance, and somewhat exploitative and dangerous in how it handles this. There's zero nuance to be found in the themes and messages it broaches, and the intriguing and interesting subject matter is subdued with dumb choices on the behalf of the filmmaker and the creative team. There are glimpses of a good movie here, several times throughout in fact, which is why it's so frustrating to see a film dumb itself down in so many ways. This is literally the cinematic equivalent of shooting yourself in the foot on accident during a major race, hobbling your ability to finish with equal intensity like you started with. The script is laughably bad, with poorly written dialogue both in terms of spoken and sung lyrics. In fact, nothing relating to the technical aspects of this film feels deserving of awards consideration. However, the film, as frustrating and pointless as it may be in its final form, does offer moments where you can see a better film start to take shape, which unfortunately are diminished as the film progresses. As it stands, the premise and subject matter of the film are ripe for a proper adaptation that actually treats them with some seriousness and intensity. The actors here are not at fault either, as everyone, particularly Zoe Saldana and Carla Sofia Gaskin, are excellent with what they are given. If there's one positive element that's going to release out of this film's Oscar nominations, let's hope that both Gaskin and Saldana are given more work in the future from these awards. Both are extremely talented and deserve better projects where their creative freedom and expression can shine with better material. This is why it's painful and disheartening to see the discourse on this film quickly switch from healthy criticism toward the film itself and its execution to hatred towards the actors. None of the actors here deserve the blame here. They are simply working with what they were given. The fault lies entirely on the filmmakers and creative team for crafting a film that feels like a first draft script with zero revision or addition to help it along. As you're probably aware, Emilia Pérez has garnered 13 Academy Award nominations this year, which is tied with films such as Oppenheimer and Forrest Gump as the second most nominations of all time. Such an occurrence was a great shock to the movie-going public, and many are left scratching their heads at such a circumstance. However, for as much as the film community and critics everywhere do not like the film, the truth of the matter is that the industry does. You have filmmakers such as James Cameron arriving in support of this, and actors everywhere are proclaiming it's a revolutionary film. My question is, Is this so-called revolutionary film anywhere to be found in the final product? As someone who loves film and whose passion lies in film, it's so painful to see a movie like Emilia Pérez where the promise is there, but the execution falls so incredibly short. However, this is not an open excuse to laud a film with accolades that don't feel entirely earned. Only time will tell how Emilia Pérez will fare awards-wise, as the Oscars are still a month away at the time of recording this video, but I do not find we will be looking back on this film years from now with any sort of reverence whatsoever. If this film ends up winning Best Picture this year, we may very well be dealing with another Crash-like situation, in which even years later we are still confused and shocked at the outcome of this film winning the award. That's why I'm giving Emilia Pérez a 1.5 out of 5 stars. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this review on my channel. If you're new around here and you like the content you see, don't forget to click that subscribe button down below, like the video, and turn on push notifications. Also, leave comment suggestions down below for future video, essay, and review topics. With that being said, until next time, this is Mitchell signing off. Peace out.